Hello, I'm Leonard Maltin, and we're here at the magnificent Walt Disney Feature Animation Research Library. And with me are two of the living legends of animation, Ollie Johnston and Frank Thomas. Can I ask you each, how do you feel about Mickey Mouse?
Oh, I have a great affection for him because he meant a lot in my life. Without Mickey, if it had been one of these other characters, Felix or something like that, I don't think it would ever reach the peak that he reached. And has a charm that Walt put into him. And I feel that there's this close relationship between Walt and Mickey that's been very important in my life.
And you, Frank?
Yeah, I always loved the little guy because of the scenes that I got to do with him and the fun I had creating him. And there's a feeling you get when you make the drawings and then you send them out to the camera and you see the film and suddenly this guy up here is alive. He's as alive as you are and he's doing the things that he's thinking of it himself.
Do you remember the first time you saw Mickey Mouse cartoons in theaters long before you worked for Walt?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they were very popular, particularly with us. But, you know, there were a lot of cartoons prior to Walt's entrance into the field.
Well, Felix was the biggest silent star, right?
But there's an interesting bit of development there. They drew him with black hands on a black arm against a black body and black feet. And if he said something in here, you know, say, oh, guys, you couldn't see it. And Walt realized that fairly early. They tried it on him, putting the white gloves on him here and the white shoes on him, but it had to clear up. And Walt was so strong on getting over the acting ability of the characters and what he wanted them to be doing that he changed the whole feeling of the cartoons from then on.
So it wasn't action, it was acting.
Yeah.
That made the difference.
Even in those very first days.
Did those cartoons inspire you to want to work in animation? Is it fair to say that?
You know, I like to see them, and I was happy about it, but it never occurred to me I was going to be working there.
Mm-hmm. Same thing with me. Mm-hmm. I wanted to learn to draw better, and I eventually came down, went to Chenard, where Frank was going, and that was fun. I was going to be a magazine illustrator, but something happened along the way. Frank went out to Disney's and got hired, and a few weeks later he said, they want me to come out there too. So I did, and I got hooked on it.
What year was that?
In 1935 with me, you were 34. About 6 weeks ahead of me. He's always 6 weeks ahead.
I'm the older man.
By 6 weeks?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's look at some of these drawings and tell me what strikes you about it. Now here's the first time Mickey was ever drawn, I guess. This is plain crazy.
Yeah.
Back in 1928. Now, I don't know if we're looking at Ub Iwerk's actual drawings here, but chances are we are.
They are.
He did every drawing.
Yeah. I loved the stuff he did up in the airplane where he wanted to kiss Minnie. And I thought, gee, this is wonderful acting. Walt must have talked this to them. And she, no, she didn't want to do it. So he finally grabs her and kisses her, and she jumps out of the airplane.
Oh, yes, and her panties.
Yeah, and her parachute. But that was a wonderful little section to me. I thought it was way advanced over anything else in the picture.
Ub laid the groundwork for so much of animation that other people built on. Is there something about his drawing that's distinctive? I mean, when you look at it, do you see something that stands out to you?
Well, I think they're all very clearly staged and very simple action. They're very simple and easy to read.
And they get the point across.
They get the point across, absolutely.
This is sort of strange drawing on the arms, and the legs are just strings. But he was moving fast, shooting back and forth.
Is that what they call rubber hose animation sometimes? That kind of...
I would.
Those limbs?
Yeah. awful lot of stiff things in the early action, but Ub knew how to handle it somehow so that he could do something that was strong by being stiff.
Here's 2 sets from Steamboat Willie. And that's Mickey. I mean, there he is right there. I mean, it's early and it's simple, but that drawing has personality, doesn't it?
Sure.
And that's just one frame, but it's there. That always astonishes me. There's life in a single drawing like that.
He was working against several problems here. They tried to have the head a circle and the body a circle, and connected by just 2 lines there, a very short distance. And they couldn't get any body expressions, any acting on the body to go over or come up, hey, look what I'm doing, or anything. He was always just stuck here between the round bottom and the round top. The other way he came around here and around here, and then fit into this circle down below. You couldn't tell, it take the head off, you can't tell what he's doing. Looks like he ate a big lunch.
So what you mean is that part of what acting comes out of what we call body language, right?
Yeah,
And if there's no body, you can't have body language.
you got it.
A lot of people have theorized that that circular idea has a subliminal effect on people. There's something simple and basic and almost primal about that circle, the circle head especially. Do you think that's true? Is there something that people find appealing about that kind of design?
Yeah, they say if you show the baby a head with these circles on it and a doll's head over here, they'll take this one. They just automatically like that simple shape.
Well, Walt used to talk about that. It says, there must be something about this little guy. Don't louse it up now. At one point, they were leaving off the tail because they didn't like, he doesn't have to be enough of a mouse. What are they going at? They got to get more personality in here. Walt spotted it immediately. What happened to his tail? What are you guys doing here?
Do you remember, was there a lot of discussion about him being a mouse? He was so much a person. It was almost an afterthought, it seems, that he was a mouse. Did you think of him as a mouse?
No, we never tried to animate him like a mouse. We never put him on all fours. Even if a mouse could run on his hind legs, we used a different type of animation for it, so it's more believable.
Let's talk a little about Walt being Mickey's alter ego. It's been said many times, and Walt's widow, Lillian, was heard to say after Walt died that it was very hard for her to ever look at Mickey Mouse because he reminded her so much of her husband.
Yeah. Well, somehow you felt he created the character, even though Ub drew the stuff. Walt was the guy that okayed it. All the time that I was there before we got into things like Snow White, I always thought of Walt as being part of Mickey and vice versa. The ideas that he put into Mickey were so important and made the personality.
Did you ever watch him at a recording session? Did you ever watch him perform as Mickey?
You did for
Was that for the Pointer?
Pointer.
Tell us about that.
Well, in the story meetings that they were having, and the animator usually didn't come in until the very end of this. He was so funny when he would act it out, and you could tell that as a kid, under 12, he would have been lying in bed, you know, thinking away, and if a bear came up to me, what would I say to him? And he was so funny, we asked him, can we put a camera on you? Well, hell no. Gee, what are you doing? No. Well, he came in the next day and he had this funny old hat that he wore whenever it was raining, and it was all bent down and dripping. And still, as he started to say these lines, he couldn't hold himself back. And he did all these same things, gestures along with it. He did the whole thing.
He was a wonderful actor. He'd get up and act something out in the picture that you wanted. Jungle Book, he did a lot of good stuff for us. It's just a natural actor, but he had to be in the right mood to do it.
Let's look at some more advanced drawings then. Now this is from the birthday party, where they're really getting the characters better established as we...
Look at the way the legs are drawn.
And the shoes.
So in other words, if you were teaching somebody how to draw and how to animate, this would be how not to do it.
Yeah, I would say for that period, it's pretty good. But for today, you'd think they were kidding if they drew it this way.
And yet if you watch the finished sequence, as you say, it works. So you look at a drawing, can you tell, is it like a fingerprint? Can you tell whose mark is on that drawing?
On certain ones,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell, like on this, whether there are 4 or 5 different guys there that could have done it. I wouldn't be able to recognize it because I never worked with them or with their drawings. But anything that Freddie Moore did, I was his assistant for quite a while. I could spot them a mile off. I could spot anything Fergie did and anything Ham Lusk did. They were different.
So for people who don't understand this, now everyone, all the animators would work from a model sheet, right? And everybody was supposed to be drawing Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse exactly the same way. But in spite of that, each person had his own special technique or personality in the drawing.
We were all trying to do something that expressed the inner feelings of the character for that particular thing and how it related to other characters. And so you couldn't help but draw it a different way.
And yet what's fascinating to somebody who is a layman, who doesn't have a skilled eye that way, it's seamless.
Yeah.
There's no difference in the drawing style from the beginning of a Mickey Mouse cartoon to the end. And there could have been 6, 8 people, 12 people working on it, but I would never know by looking at it, but you guys would.
Yeah.
Ollie, do you remember the first Mickey Mouse cartoon you worked on?
How could I forget? Brave Little Tailor.
A great one.
I drew him looking out the window, I think, but mainly I drew stuff where he was on the giant. And not too many scenes, but some there where he was about to get swallowed and stuff like that. I thought, boy, this is great stuff here. And I'm getting real personality into this. But actually, it was pretty primitive.
Oh, it's still a great cartoon. The Brave Little Tailor is still one of the best.
That's very good.
And you did the scene where he's describing killing 7 in one blow?
Yes.
And Fred's almost his most famous scene is where he walks out after he's agreed to kill the guy, and he says, I'll be seeing you, I hope. And it's really great little drawings.
Now, this is a cartoon that you actually worked on, Frank, when you were assisting Art Babbitt. Now, this is Two Gun Mickey. You handled these drawings almost 70 years ago, strange as that may seem.
Sorry, Mickey. Sorry. That's pretty good Mickey, though, you know.
Yeah.
Now, what was it like to be were you an in-betweener or an assistant? What was your position at that?
No, I was only an in-betweener on this picture.
And so what did that mean? Art Babbitt would be animating a scene of Mickey, and if an action took 50 drawings, how many would he do? How many would you do?
It depended on how mad he was at me. Art would do this one and maybe part of one of these in here because the hand comes around. And then he'd hand me the scene and say, do the rest of them in there now.
Could bad in-between spoil a good scene?
Oh, yeah.
Make it jerky.
I only had one scene, fortunately, in all my years there that I had to reanimate because the cleanup man misinterpreted everything and drew it in a different style and thinking a different way. He always thought a different way than I did. And he just ruined it. There's nothing I could save out of it.
Wow.
That happened to me too, but for a different reason. Somebody took my scene home to put all in-betweens in, everything, and put it on the top of her car as she was going to load her stuff in their car to go home. And guess what? Fell down and sprinkled all over the street.
Now, collectors tend to collect animation art and like the cells, but for you guys, it's the drawings that really matter most, isn't it?
Yeah, I prefer a tight drawing to a cell because you lose a little, it's a tracing.
When you see these pencil drawings, when you look at these now, is there kind of a unique connection with the artist that maybe doesn't exist in the finished product?
Well, you think of the women, all the work they had to do with the ink and the paint, and I think, gee, how can they trace that so accurately on there? And I respected the work that they did, and the layout man who created the background for a thing and how he staged the character so that that was important. And the animator didn't necessarily follow that. This layout man would just scream, "You didn't follow my drawing!" But other than that, I don't know. We like the drawings because that's what we like to do. And I get that all the time from people today on the computers. And they say, well, they can do awful good work on the computers, and it's a lot easier, but it takes a little longer, and it's a little more expensive, and it's crueler. But I like to just sit down there with the character and know what he's doing and draw him. There's something you feel about your pencil in your hand. And boy, you can just forget the rest of the world. You're down there in this little dream world drawing away on the thing.
Okay, final question. One word to describe Mickey Mouse. What's the first word that comes to mind to describe Mickey Mouse?
I think I'd say appealing.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about him that just drew people in. From the little, as you said, those little tots couldn't even talk yet, and yet they'd say, yeah, I'm big, and reach for him. He has to have appeal, and even when he was acting seriously, he had a very definite personality. A lot of people have said, well, he can do anything. You know, he can be a cowboy, he can be a dancer, he can be a musician, he can be a mountain climber. He can be anything.
Would you choose the same word or a different word?
Well, I'd certainly say it was appealing, but also inspiring. It was inspiring to me, the fact that he did so much for the medium. What he did, gee, I love saying I'm working for Mickey Mouse, and that meant for Walt and Mickey Mouse. And to me, he was an inspiration and something I loved. And every time I'd make a drawing for somebody, with a Mickey, I felt, wow, geez, I've done them a big favor.
That's true. It's true. Thanks so much.
We're speeding.
Well, how would you two gentlemen describe what it is about what you did and what Walt Disney did and your fellow animators that gave your work such universal appeal then and now?
We were able to communicate our feelings about the characters to the audience and make them come to life, and they express their emotions and their feelings just like any human being would have, something they can identify with that's familiar to them. They see these little characters with emotions on their face and their bodies and performing for the camera.
Yeah, Walt had a way of challenging you. He was trying to lift you up, always to do better than you'd done on the last picture. And as one animator said shortly after we came there, he said, why does Walt always ask you to do something you don't know how to do? Why can't he just make a picture of the things we know how to do? You know, it'd be a lot easier. But no, Walt was always very critical of himself, his own judgment, his own ideas. Yet he had far better ideas than anyone else. And story is the vision of where you're going with the pictures. But I think the main thing was that he was not only supportive of the crew, the people who worked with him closely, but he demanded that they do better work. Always, we said perfection is what he pays you for. It's what goes beyond perfection that he wants. So you're always challenged. You say, boy, I hope Walt's right. I don't know how I'm going to do this. You know, when he asks you to take a drop of water and give it a personality, what do? A doorknob. How do you make a doorknob have personality?
He was a great actor himself, too. He could come into a meeting, describe what he was going to do, what he felt about the characters, then get up and act some of it out. When I started on Jungle Book, he was telling me about how Phil Harris was the kind of guy who was always snapping his fingers and working to music. And Walt got up and did this little dance where he went forward and then back, and he gave the whole key to the character. through that little bit of acting.
When you guys were actually creating scenes with Baloo and Pinocchio and Bambi, these various characters, did you have any idea as you were drawing them that they'd have this type of universal appeal? Was that part of your consciousness that they were going to last this long?
You hoped they would.
Well, I never hoped they'd last this long. I hoped that they would last one picture so we could do another one. And I never even thought of a re-release. And when they started after 7 years, let's re-release Snow White again. Then because of the war and losing the foreign market and everything, Pinocchio did not pay for itself and Fantasia did not pay for itself, and Bambi was a disaster. But about 7 years later, they all started coming in. I remember Walt stopped us in the hall one day and said, "Hey, Bambi just paid for itself." We said, "Gee, hooray!" And it seems so long ago that we did that picture. But somehow he could keep things going.
At one point in the film, you mentioned that two of you and Walt speak the same language. And you begin to elaborate on that, but if you can elaborate a little further, what is that language that the three of you spoke that kept it going?
Well, I think it's bringing the characters to life through establishing personalities that the audience can identify with, and getting, of course, the entertainment through the personalities. His big thing was entertainment, communicating entertainment, and the big way he did it was through personalities, not just gags, but he got the humor out of what the characters did rather than somebody bumping into something or falling on his face. He got it out of the relationship of one character to another. He got the humor that way.
See, there were other animators who didn't feel the same way as we did. A large number of them, and some of them thought that it all ought to be gags, inventive gags, new gags, different gags, but always it had to be funny, because Walt said entertainment, so you'd be funny. Others would say, no, he doesn't mean funny for entertainment. You know, a football game's entertaining, there are no laughs in it, and a mystery story's entertaining. So when he says entertainment, he doesn't mean just laughs. He means, we were sure that he meant getting inside the character in a way that the audience could identify with. And many of them tried to do that, but they tried to do it in different ways, by better drawings, stronger drawings, by a better staging. The layout men felt they were very instrumental in making the picture a success, because they would lay out the scenes, what they should be, what angle, how close you are to the character. And of course, as animators, you'd change that the first thing you'd Then the effects men would come along and have a big splash of water and cover the whole thing anyway.
I think you two in the film are an inspiration not only to animators, but to people who want to lead happy, productive lives that are full of creativity and imagination. What do you think it is about the two of you? What qualities do you have that can be an inspiration to people?
I think we were always trying to do something together. We were working on a project, a book, or whatever. We wrote 4 books together. When we were at the studio, we would drive to and from work together, always talking about how you could improve the scenes we were working on. I think the fact that we both like to do something well, and we're not the same type of personalities, really. He's much more analytical than I am. I'm more intuitive. I jump into something. He considers it more carefully. But the fact that we liked working on things together and developing them, improving them, and that's where the fun came. And I think we started that even back in college.
I have time for one more. One point in the film where you mentioned Walt became, I don't know if he was so much deserted animation, but he went on to pursue other projects. Mm-hmm. Namely, it looked like Disneyland was the big one as far as other ventures. If you can just talk about that briefly, what that was like, and if you feel like he deserted you, what were your initial feelings about Disneyland and the theme park itself?
Oh, they were great.
Yeah.
In some cases, we wish we were still with him working on those projects. Then we talked to the guys who were, and they'd say, no, you're better off where you are. He's really shooting high on these projects. You know, Mr. Lincoln, he tells them, said, we're going to build a figure here who'll walk up and down and hold his lapels like this and make gestures and talk to you. And the engineers would say, he's going to do what? And then he would read in the newspaper. That's what he told the Illinois legislature.
He told the governor, he says it'll be ready in April, and the guys hadn't even started it yet.
Well, they hadn't found a way to do it yet. And they thought he was gone back there to apologize and say, no, we're not going to make that. But no, he went back and sold them. I was having lunch with the guys the next day, and they said, God, did you see the papers this morning? What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? But that's the way Walt was. He was always curious and going on to the next one, and what more can you do? It was very exciting to be around because he was excited.
I think he developed the entertainment of this century. The new ways, the parks, his animation, whatever he did was something new and fresh that was much better than what had been done before. I think he has given this whole country, the whole world, a great way of having entertainment and enjoying their lives.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank
My pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Pinocchio, why didn't you go to school?
School?
Here he's kind of innocently looking for some way out of this, and I tried to pick little movements and gestures and bits of acting that showed how he felt, that he's caught in a trap, really. And so he looks over at the side, kind of looking for help, and of course there's none there for him. He has to face this thing himself. I decided to pick some little thing like a little kid would do to show his embarrassment at being caught in this predicament. So I had him twisting his pants leg.
I was going to school.
A piece of acting that seemed to fit at this point. I always think basically of the emotion and then fit the action to it. In other words, I have to think, how would this guy act if he's terrified? Sometimes I act it out myself in the room, or sometimes I just act it out in my mind, not necessarily with a mirror, but just feel this situation, and then I try to make these drawings. And as I make them, I'm pushing and working my body because I feel it all through my body. And I feel this terror myself.
What's going on? Oh, I've been double-crossed! Help! Help! Somebody help! I've been framed! Help! Please, you gotta help me! Oh, be a pal! Call it!
Pinocchio is actually terrified here, not only of Lampwick, but I think of what he thinks might be happening to himself. And this, with the face all tightened up the way, and here, you know, I've used extra lines here that actually make him look older because I think it helped the terrified feeling. And he's backed away from the guy with his shoulders up. He's like he's trying to push himself up the wall and get completely away from him, particularly as he sees these hands change into hooks.
A good example of the difficulties posed for the animators by a seemingly simple piece of action is the scene in which Pinocchio is placed inside a cage in a moving wagon.
They had this little perch inside the cage, which was swinging different than the cage itself was going around. And they'd done a very interesting thing there. They built a cage, actually built one, a model of it only about so high. And we needed a cage, you know, actually a larger one. But they built it about half size of actual twigs so that it had the real look of the cage and it had the perch in it and everything. Then they photographed that swinging and bouncing the way it would as the wagon went along.
No! No, wait! Let me out! I'll tell my father!
Get along then!
Well, that saved the time of somebody having to animate that cage, which would have been an enormous job to get all those things in perspective, turning around, and get it accurate. But by having it already on film, then all I had to do was trace it off. Well, somebody else traced it off, and they gave me all these drawings of the cage bouncing around and said, okay, now put Pinocchio inside. And I said, whereabouts does he go inside here, you know, because he's sitting here and the cage swings like this. Well, how do you draw him this way? And as he starts to get up and reach for something, the floor drops out from under him. You have to have him match that perspective.
Oh, Johnny! Oh, Johnny, where are you? Johnny Cricket!
Well, I think it's your relationship with the character that keeps you going through a scene like that. Because if I had had Goofy in the cage, if I'd had Donald Duck in the cage, or anybody else, they would have acted differently. But I felt so strongly, poor Pinocchio, you know, it wasn't his fault he got thrown in there. And he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know how to deal with this thing. It was just sheer panic. He's a little kid.
I shouldn't have walked out on you.
Guess I'll never see my father again.
The entertainment business, the name Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson probably would not be well known to the general public, but they have to be included probably among of the most important artists of this generation. They went back, worked for Walt Disney in 1934 and 35, became the chief animators at the studio. Some of the films they worked on include Snow White, Cinderella, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Bambi, Peter Pan, and every feature film that came out of that studio. They've written a book called, They've written a book called Disney Animation, The Illusion of Life, and it's a magnificent book. Would you welcome, please, Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson. Please sit down, gentlemen. Have I got Frank here or Ollie here?
I'm Frank.
You're Frank and you're Ollie. You know, you have entertained all of us for so many years, and yet the general public never gets to see the guys behind the scenes.
We liked it that way.
You liked it that way, really?
Yeah.
We get
Little
nervous.
elves in the forest.
This is a way to kind of sublimate your own personalities and have it come out in...
When we go to the theater and with an audience, particularly a kid audience, and watch them, you die. You just
Yeah.
die. You know, kids are cruel anyway.
Yeah, basically. Basically true. It must give you a great thrill, though, to realize that you worked on what I guess would be considered almost the official versions of fairy tales over the years.
They've become that.
I think that a lot of people criticize that and say we've changed them around, but I think they are the official versions
The
now.
librarians complain a lot about that.
Yeah. You know, Walt Disney is such a well-known name worldwide, and yet you people who didn't know him, and I did not know him, you hear a lot of conflicting views, that he was a cold man, he was hard to work for, all kinds of different things. How did you find the man to work for?
They're all correct.
All, yeah.
Yeah, he was everything you said.
Right.
I mean, he was a great pleasure to work for. He was very inspiring, but awfully tough.
Right.
I mean, you'd work your tail off doing something you thought was the greatest thing you'd ever done.
Right.
And he'd just let it go by and say, now here's what we're going to do.
In other words, to him it was just expected
That's what perfection was expected.
to have excellent work. How many animators did at the height of Disney Studios did they have altogether?
We had 1,200 working there. At one time, they were not all animators, but
Right.
they were nearly all artists.
You have what you call painters and fill-ins and people who work on...
assistants and stylists.
I was going through this book
inspirational
this afternoon. It is absolutely fascinating because those of us who go and watch a cartoon or a full-length feature just kind of take it for granted and don't see the laborious process of doing figure after figure. How many figures would you say in a cartoon of even just, 8 or 10 minutes, how many separate sketches would you have any idea have to be made to just complete that or move to make the movement?
Well, you can figure it out. There are 24 frames a second.
Right.
And all you got to do is multiply the number of drawings against the number of frames. And I'm no good at math.
So it gets into the hundreds of thousands of...
And a feature picture, we probably do a couple of million drawings. About 500,000 would end up on the screen.
Right.
The rest of them you throw away because they aren't good enough.
That's incredible. You talk about 1 million drawings. Is this what you wanted to do when you were both started with Disney? You were both illustrators or animators at that time? Did you have to audition for Disney? Or what?
Oh, yes. And we'd known each other up at Stanford University in the art department there. I thought I was going to be a landscape painter. That was fun.
Right.
And Ollie was going to
Magazine illustrator.
sports heroes and things like that. And we came down here to art school and heard that Disney was expanding and they wanted looking for artists.
Right.
So I went out and took the tryout. Now, tryout, you know what an in-between is? No, you don't know an in-between.
No, I don't know.
Well, the animator makes...
Be patient with me here. What's an in-between?
The animator makes the key drawings. If an arm's going from here to here to
Right.
here. Now, there may be 1, 2, 3 drawings in between those two.
I
There
see.
may be only 2 in here, depending upon the timing of the thing.
So there's the animator and the in-between works on...
Yeah.
The in-betweener is the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
But when you were hired at that time, you had to make your good on production.
Right.
Now, if you're hired, you get, oh boy, you get a month to practice and learn lots of things and study, and
Right.
there's so much to learn now.
And the style of animation, if you look at the old original Steamboat Willie from Mickey Mouse, for example, the style of animation has changed over the years. Was that just kind of by trial and error?
Walt wanted to keep refining it and make it more believable.
Right.
And so that's why it developed that way. The old ones were really charming, I thought.
Right.
I don't think they'd hold up for a feature length.
Right. And the way you can give the human emotions to animals and even human emotions to objects
Yes.
is a challenge, you know.
Right.
You ought to have some drawings here, these bottom ones.
Showing what you can do with inanimate.
Now, this is a flour sack.
Yeah.
Is it not? And the idea is, how do you make a flour sack look sad? That's the way you do it. It's a happy flour sack. A rejected flour sack.
Was in love.
In the what? Macho flour sack. Mousy. Nosy flour sack.
Eavesdropping.
Tickled. And tired. Those are wonderful expressions you can get from just an inanimate object.
Yeah, be fun to animate those someday.
Yeah, it's incredible. We'll take a quick break. We're coming right back. That's wonderful. It looks so easy. Gentlemen, I thank you so much. I wish we had longer to talk because I thank you on behalf of all of us for bringing so much pleasure over the years. Thank you. Good night.
Oh, Smee, the way of a man with a maid, taking the best years of her life and then casting her aside like an old glove.
Ain't it a bloomin' shame?
And you know, Mr. Smee was the first in my long line of drunks.
Yeah, and you didn't even drink.
That's right. I just watched when I went to parties.
Yeah, you'd go there and watch the rest of us make fools of ourselves.
And that's where I got the idea for Uncle Waldo. This friend of mine would just sit there and go, Sherry!
Sherry! Sherry!
Oh, Uncle Waldo, you're just too much. You mean he's had too much? Abigail, yes, we best get Uncle Waldo to bed.
I say there now, what's all the whispering about, huh? Now, girls, don't shush your old Uncle Waldo. Why, you'll wake up the whole neighborhood.
Sire, Stork is Robin Hood.
Oh, there you are, old boy. PJ, you won't believe this, but the Stork is really Robin Hood.
Robin Hood.
Get out of that if you can.
It's more difficult to do the human characters because everyone has seen a pretty girl, a boy, an old man. They know what people look like. But not many people have seen a singing and dancing lion or a bear that talks, so you have a lot more latitude with them.
In order to caricature the real thing, Walt Disney always said you have to know what the real thing looks like. So before we draw something, if it's an animal, we try to learn what he looks like. Now in Jungle Book, we were going to do a sequence of the bear scratching. And so we studied some live action that we had of the bear. We were really loving this and enjoying this sensual pleasure and studied it very carefully. We didn't use it per se, but we did get a lot out of it and how the bear would move, what his proportions were, and a little bit about how he felt while he was doing this because they loved to scratch.
Now, with Mowgli here, he is essentially a human and he's behaving like a human. He's moving like a human, and we have to be very careful how we handle him. It's much more difficult to draw these actions. The expression always begins with the eyes. Walt always told us the audience watches the eyes, and you better watch them too. The eyes really reveal more than any part of the rest of the face what the character is thinking. Now, in the case of Shere Khan, he's very cool, very confident. He doesn't have to open his eyes wide. But poor Ka over here has quite a problem, and he's worried, he's concerned, he's trying hard to come up with some kind of an alibi or an excuse. It gives your animator a wide latitude of expressions. We had even additional problems with the snake because he has no shoulders and no hands, and we had an action here where he was going to cover his mouth with his hands. Now, what do? He had said something he didn't mean to say, and he's very embarrassed about it. By using part of his body, we were able to get the attitude we wanted. I got the bear coming in here. This is a scene where he's teaching Mowgli how to box, you know.
Oh, yeah, that's where he runs around the side.
Yeah, the boy's over in this part. Actually, these drawings follow the section here where, see the boys there in the background.
Yeah. Oh, that looks good.
And he's got this action.
He's hopping up and down.
And he's saying, keep it loose now, be real loose.
Wiggling his fanny. Yeah, that looks good. Stages well. I like it.
All in all, from the start of the story work till the picture is completed, takes about 4 years. But even so, the thing that the animator is thinking about is that his drawings are going to be up there forever. Any mistakes you make that you sort of say, well, I had a bad day, they're going to come back and haunt you. But more than that, as you work on a character, you develop the character, you begin to feel like a parent. And you work so hard to make him come to life up there on the screen. You feel like it's someone you know very well, and you have to enjoy working with them. And when the picture's over, there's always a sad moment as you finish your last scene because you know that's the last time you're ever going to see that particular character. He may live in your mind from then on, but you'll never really be working with him in a creative sense.
Hello.
The key to these characters, I've said it several times, is making them think. And I think that's the key to Disney animation. Well, that was the pleasure of doing the drawing and conceiving it and understanding the personalities and how one character felt about another one. And making these drawings, some people say, how can you sit there and make those same little drawings 8 hours a day? I'd say, there aren't two here alike. If I do say so, our fairies that we did, I think, gave some warmth and heart to the picture.
The Three Good Fairies!
At one point, Walt wanted the three fairies to all be alike, sort of like Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
Well, what do you think of it?
And we thought, that's not going to be any fun. So we started and worked on how we could develop them into special personalities.
I'll turn her into a flower.
Maleficent?
Oh, no, dear. The princess.
It helped us a lot to use live-action reference and real dogs. It does that just like it did on Bambi on the deer, because you don't know everything about the way dogs move, and you don't know everything about their construction until you start to study it. Well, I liked working on Trusty.
Dog's best friend is his human.
I always liked the scene where he says, if this person's annoying you, Miss Lady.
If this person is annoying you, Miss Lady.
That was fun to animate because I could tell he felt it so.
Mother, do you realize what you just said? Of course. I said, if.
The stepsisters were the broadest characters that I had done up to that point, certainly. Oh, a lot of scenes where I even went too broad. I remember one where Anastasia, she was smiling, you know, like that, silly smile. So I went real broad with that, thinking I'm going to get something really funny out of this. But finally Walt called me in. He says, you know, she is a little bit ugly. I suppose you could fix that up.
I'm surprised to look at it now, 50 years later, and think, were we that good?
I look back and I think of all the things that I did that I could have done better, but still there are a few things I'm pretty proud of, and I'm just glad I was a part of it.